So in every deck of cards, there are 4 of these, okay? There are 4 aces in every deck of cards, like there are every other ranked card. In Texas Hold'em, no limit to Texas Hold'em, if you start off with this hand, you stand a very good chance of winning, Maurice. The reason for that is it's the best pair that you can have. So if you start with this hand, you can make very good hands. And also you don't need to make a hand. That's the key thing. You have a made hand already. You have the best pair available. Don't get me wrong, Maurice. These hands can lose. Often in what's called a multi-way pot environment is where this hand would lose. So if you are up against one player, you're always going to be a big favourite, whatever their hand is. If you're up against 2 players, you're still going to be a big favourite. And then as you are up against more and more different hands, it is more likely that board community cards will run out, will mean that this hand might not win in the end. And there's actually a point where you're not a favourite at some point. So, but aces is the best starting hand to answer your question. Louise Parkin wants to know the difference between checking and calling. So whenever you're playing poker, you always have a few options in front of you. If you're playing what's called pre-flop, which means the betting before the first 3 community cards are dealt, the flop is the first 3 community cards on the board. If you are betting pre-flop, you have options to check or call, depending on where you're seated. But in the basics really, and you have those options again post-flop as well. But to get down to the basics, checking is simply passing the betting on to the next player. And it can be symbolised when you're in a live environment by tapping the table. And that means that you're checking. It means you're passing the betting on to the next player. And this basically is a way of saying, I don't want to put my money into the pot yet. I want to see what you've got. And allow that player to bet or to check as well. Calling is only something you have an option to do if you're facing a bet. So if someone's made a bet and it's on you now, to stay in this hand, you have to at least call. If you cannot check if you're facing the bet, you can only call, raise, or fold. So raising is where we increase the bet that we're facing rather than calling, and folding is just letting your hand go, putting it in the muck, and you don't have to invest any more money into that pot. So checking is passing the betting on to the next player. Calling is matching a bet that you're facing. Hope that clears that one up for you, Louise. Bert wants to know, why does 4 of a kind lose to a straight flush? Well, these are the questions we had in. Simplicity about why does a 4 of a kind lose to a straight flush? A straight flush is mathematically hard to get. That's what it is. That's the reason, Bert. So your odds of hitting a straight flush are 0.00139%. So you can see it's quite a hard hand to attain. So I wouldn't worry too much about why they beat each other, but you do need to know the hand rankings. But it's a very rare hand to get. 4 of a kind is 0.0240% to hit. So you can see it's just in the maths exactly the probability of making a hand is why a straight flush always beats 4 of a kind. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what that means, a straight flush. We'll get the cards out again. Should have kept them in order probably. So straight flush is 5 cards in the same rank in order. So you've got straight running. Let's get these cards out. Never find the one you want. It's like playing real poker. You're never going to get the cards you need. This is a straight flush. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. That is a straight flush. 98765 in the same suit. So it's running from any card except an ace. If it runs from the ace down to the 10, that's a royal flush. But it's running from any card in order, in rank order, and in the same suit. Very hard to get. That is what is called a straight flush. 4 of a kind is just where you have 4 cards of exactly the same rank. So we have, in a deck of cards, you have cards of rank and you have cards of suit. The suits are hearts, spades, clubs and diamonds, and here are your cards of rank. So 4 sevens. Now, don't forget, in poker, you always need to make a 5-card hand, but I mean, this issue doesn't matter so much. But that would be a 4 of a kind. But that would lose to the straight flush we showed earlier. Benzo has asked us what starting hands are good to play. Starting hands, traditionally, there's quite a good book on this if you're really, when I first started out playing and working in the industry, is I'd say the best one, obviously, is aces, but there are a variety of starting hands that are significant that you can play in no limit Texas Hold'em. The situations where you play them in obviously depends on what the betting is, but as a go-to guide, I'd refer to a book by TJ Cloutier and Tom McAvoy called Championship No Limit Hold'em. Really good resource for just beginners poker as well as this. Aces is your best starting hand. There are also any pairs that are big pairs. Aces, 2 kings, 2 queens, 2 jacks, 2 tens, and then you get into your medium rank starting hands, 9s down to, well, 7s, and then worse pairs, but they're all playable in different situations, and we'll get into that maybe in another video, which will come down to kind of like hand selection. But you cannot go wrong generally being in a pot to see the flop, at least, with, I'd say, aces, kings, queens, jacks, and then 10s, 9s becomes a little bit more ropey, depends what's happening in the hand. Other good starting hands to play, Benzo. In a multi-way pot, and a multi-way pot means where there's lots of players who've invested money and you can be in this pot as well, small pairs, because if you can make trips 3 of a kind, so you say you've got 2 5s and a 5 comes on the board, you've got a very well disguised hand, and you can make a very premium hand and take the lead very quickly. Other good hands as well are 2 cards that are highly ranking, so an ace and a king, king and a queen, and then possibly a king and a jack and a queen and a jack. Obviously, these hands come with their own issues when you come to playing out the betting after the flop. An ace and a king, you're always going to, if you hit a king, you're going to have a pair of kings with an ace kicker. So that's going to be the best pair of kings available. If you've got king queen, you could be losing to ace king. But as you become more of a favourite this game, you'll realise king queen could well be quite a monster hand in a lot of situations. So cards of high, so Ben, to answer your question again, aces, kings, queens and jacks are the starting hands, and ace king, ace queen, possibly ace jack and king queen. And then the other pairs that you get dealt before the flop, you can play those depending on how many players are in the pot and what odds you're getting to join the hand. Ben also wants to know, what hands do we fold pre-flop? So pre-flop means before the community cards come out. The kind of hands you don't want to be playing are 2 cards that don't work together. Here's an example. A 9 and a 3, okay? You cannot make a straight with this hand. If you could make a straight, but you're going to have a worse off straight probably. You cannot make a straight with the 2 cards. You want the 2 cards to work together for you, okay? This hand they can't help each other. You're never going to make a straight, and you also can't make a flush with the 2 cards using both cards. So these are the kind of hands you want to avoid playing: 9-3, 7-2, 8-2, 10-2, Jack 3. These kind of hands. And then, what are the best drawing hands? Well, traditionally, people do like to play what drawing hands say for the beginners. What is a drawing hand? A drawing hand is a hand that can make multiple different types of hands using the 2 cards that you've got. This is a typical drawing hand, 9-8 of diamonds. You're not looking to hit a 9 here or an 8. You're not looking to make a pair with this hand. You're looking for the board to run out something like this. So it comes down ace-6-3, for instance. Okay, you're looking to hit a flush, which is 5 cards of the same suit, or you're looking to at least flop something that can give you a chance of winning. This is a good example. The board here, 10 of spades, 6 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds. Your 9-8 diamonds is now a very premium hand. You can hit a 7 to make a straight. You can also hit a flush if a diamond comes. So this is a good drawing hand for this board. So 9-8 suited, Jack 10 suited, 10-9 suited. Those are your traditional good drawing hands. There are other good drawing hands that have a gap in them. So, for instance, 10-8 of hearts. They don't need to connect directly, because if the gin card comes, the 9 of hearts or a 9 of diamonds or any 9 really, you're starting to be able to have possibilities to make a straight. Also, you've also got the chance of always making a flush with this hand. So these are your kind of best drawing hands. We had another question from Red Ted 71. Red Ted 71 wants to know, what is the best piece of advice you would give to any poker player starting out? I think the best piece of advice I got was from a professional poker player. Ben, are there any exceptions to the rule of betting to draw cards? I'll come around to that one. The best piece of advice, Red Ted 71, the best piece of advice I've had to play poker was from a professional poker player called Nick Passot, who I met at Gut Shop years ago. He explained to me this kind of 3 levels of what you're trying to do mentally in this game. First, and this is really just for beginners, the first level is looking at your 2 cards and knowing what you've got and what hand you've played. That's the first level. Do I know what hand I've got? Do I have a pair? Do I have 2 pair? Do I actually have a full house here? What other full houses are available, etc. The second level of knowledge, so you know what your hand is. Level 2, I know what my hand is, but what's my opponent got? So that's, you've recognised what your hand is, but now you've got to think just what your opponent's got, not just, I've got this hand, I'm going to put all my money in, I'm ready to go. Because just making the hand is not enough. You've got to really understand, why is this person putting more money into the pot? Maybe I should be thinking about what hand they've got. And then the third level of thinking is, I know what I've got. I think I know what he's got. But what does he think I've got? So I'll repeat that. I know what I've got. I think I know what he's got. But what does he think I've got? Now you're playing on levels here. Levels beyond most other players' station, which is you're starting to think about what the impression you're giving off about your hand. And this means you can engineer so many different things and make your player make really big mistakes. And you can also stop yourself making mistakes. Why is he still putting money into the pot? I've shown loads of strength. Surely he thinks that I've got the goods here. So that is probably the best advice I could give you, Red Ted 71. Ben, so are there exceptions to the rule on betting for draw cards if I get an ace and a 7? Not sure about how to answer that one because I can't quite understand the question. We'll come back to that. When does the minimum get raised? Jay wants to know. When does the minimum get raised? I think, to answer your question, Jay, there are 2 formats to poker. The first format that most people play when they start playing poker is a tournament format. So tournament format is where you buy in for a set amount of money, say 20 quid. You'll get the same amount of chips to start with, traditionally 1,500 chips, 3,000 in chips. And then you play. The minimum in tournament situations gets raised based on a tournament clock. So there's a clock running. So every, say, 20 minutes, and it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour. Every 20 minutes, say, the clock will change the blinds. So you will start off at the blinds at normally 25 and 50. The blinds, what are they? They're the forced bets the players have to post in turn, following the button from the left. So small blind and big blind. Those blinds get raised, say, every time the clock goes up. So your blinds will go from 25, 50, and then 20 minutes later, they'll go up to 50, 100. that's when the blinds get raised. So they get raised at a set time within a tournament. In a cash game, where you buy in for, say, £50 and you all get a load of £1 chips to play with, in a cash game format, the blinds will never go up because you're playing at a table where the blinds are set. So, and I avoid using the word fixed there because fixed blinds is a very different thing. But the blinds, for instance, will be £1 and £2. Those will never go up for the duration. And in a cash game format, you can just leave the table whenever you like. You can join whenever you like. There are certain etiquette things around that, but we'll get to those another time. So yeah, the minimum bet gets raised depending on if you're in a tournament on the format of the clock. So once you and your mates, when have you agreed that the blinds go up? They don't go up every round. They don't go up every time the action comes to Tony. They go up at a set time. The reason they go up at a set time, so at 7 o'clock, then 7:20, 7:40, 8 o'clock, is to make it fair so that everyone has time to act when they need to. And there's certain permutations that make it very fair rather than doing blinds going up every fifth person or whatever. So then I'm trying to clarify what this is. Are exceptions to the rule on betting for draw cards? There are no exceptions to the rules on betting for draw cards. But we're going to try and answer one of Bert's questions. Bert had a question for us about how do I know when I should be calling? There are loads of factors to consider when you're playing poker about that influence your decision. The first level, though, really to consider is the mass. There's 52 cards in a deck, and you always got 2 if you're in a hand. So, for instance, you have a hand like this, King, Queen of Diamonds, and a player puts you all in, and the board is 10-6-3 with 2 diamonds, like this, okay? And this is your hand. To work, you've got to work out what your odds are based on how much does the player bet and how many cards are there left in the deck that are going to help you make your hand. So with this hand, let's hope I get this right. There's 52 cards in the deck. You ignore the 2 that you've already got, so that leaves 50. There's been 3 that have been dealt, so that leaves you down to 47. So you've now got, that dictates, and of those 47 cards left, there are 9 that will help you make your flush. So we've got odds of roughly like 1 in 5 to make our hand. If there's £100 in the middle, and the player says, I bet 10, that means you're getting 10 to 1. And you've got a 5 to 1 chance of making your hand. So this is effectively like there being a horse in a race that his value is 10 to 1. So his value is 5 to 1, but the bookies are giving you 10 to 1. This is why it's very important to understand the mass of how many cards you've got left to make your hand, and that helps you make your decision. There are other things to factor in. It's not just based on maths. But if you go with just the maths, you probably do all right. You've got to understand how much strength has this player shown. Does he look like he's got a big hand? I'm not just talking about like physical tells. That is a bit of a myth, really, physical tells. That's something that you can only pick up once or twice ever in your poker career off the player. I'm talking about how they bet. How much do they bet? When do they bet? And what are their tend to be their betting habits? So those kind of help you work out when you should be calling. But check out the maths. There's a really good resource on a website called cardplayer.com where you can actually put in your 2 cards and then put in your opponent's hand, and it will show you your odds. It will calculate it for you. But if you can work it out yourself and learn how to, that's really important. So Ben Harling, hey Joel, how much importance do you place on tending to raise, play aggressive only when you're in position, i.e. on the button or just for the button? So this is a bit more advanced strategy, but it's a really good question. So how much importance? It's really important, really, really important. If you play passively in poker, which means calling a lot, trying to see a lot of flops, turns, rivers, if you play and not making your mark by making your bet, you tend to get lost in the hand because you've got shown no direction to yourself or to the other player. And so playing aggressively in position, which is probably the point that's most important on the button, just one button, is really important, especially in a tournament format. Picture yourself in the other player's seat. It folds around to you, you're on the button, and there's two people who have got cards in front of them that they haven't chosen to play, but there's money in the middle. It's yours. You should be raising on the button here. If you make a habit of it, players will recognise it and they'll start to re-raise you and you'll start to lose money. But you should be doing this as often as possible where it seems fit, and especially, and also in what position is called the cutoff, so just before the button. You should be raising here as well if it falls around to you. There are certain environments where it might not be suitable, Ben, like there's already been action or before. A player in early position has made a raise, another player's called. Just because you're on the button here doesn't mean you need to start piling money in. That's not a good opportunity if you've got no hand. And I think what you're referring to is like, you can play aggressively without a hand on the button, but you can also play aggressively with a hand on the button. And if you play aggressively with a hand and without a hand, your opponents really don't have any idea what you've got at any given time. And that's why it's important to play your bad hands as very similarly to how you play your good hands in some respects. If you always raise with aces on the button, try raising with 5-4 diamonds on the button as well, because they don't know what you've got. Don't forget that. They don't know what you've got. And as long as you don't make it too habitual, otherwise it becomes quite transparent and it's just like, this guy's definitely going to raise. I've got a pair of twos, I'm just going to put it all in. Like that, you could kind of force that player to make a mistake really, but that's kind of deeper strategy. But definitely, given the opportunity, raise on the button or raise in the card. Do not call, especially in the tournament format. You need these chips, you need to accumulate chips whilst they're available, because before you know it, they won't be available and you're the guy who's got no chips left. You always want to make sure you've got more chips than everyone else so you don't get knocked out. In a cash game, then, so where you're not playing a tournament format and the blinds are going up all the time, in a cash game, I would definitely advise not playing your hands aggressively in position. Not playing your hands aggressively in position frequently. You don't. Obviously, your good hands you want to play aggressively, but you don't need to raise with junk on the button in a cash game, because you're not sat there losing money, and those blinds it's just cash. They're not tournament blinds, which are way more valuable. I would also play aggressively on the button or in position when there is a player who wants to enter every pot. So say there's a player, we've all got the friends who want to see every flop, call all the time. If he's calling all the time or she's calling all the time, I would put in a raise occasion on the button or in late position, because when they inevitably call, you can go to a flop, they're more than likely going to check because they're playing every hand that they've got given, and you can confidently put in a bet on any board and they probably missed. But that's a very loose advice. But yeah, certainly you're going to win more money playing aggressively in late position than you are going to lose. And you don't need to have the courage or convictions to continue. Don't forget that as well. If it becomes blindingly obvious through the course of the hand that this person isn't giving up, let it go. And then obviously there's another level. If you think they're just making a stand, then obviously don't let it go, and you can probably put them in here. But that is kind of beyond my station in terms of the advice I'd want to give anyone. I don't want to be giving you advice to see if you're losing money, but like playing aggressively is certainly the way you should want to play. Because if you think about what it's like on the other end, the receiving end, when someone's always raising, always putting you under pressure to answer a question, it's horrible, and you feel like you don't know where you are in a hand. That's why it's so good to play aggressively, because you're putting them under it, and they don't know how to respond. When someone plays aggressively back at you, you can go to war if you've got the hand, and if you haven't got the hand, you can let it go. Sometimes it's just as important to let it go as it is to play aggressively. So hopefully that kind of covers that. Right, we're almost coming to an end, but we've got time for a few more. What else did we have in? We had one on LinkedIn. We had a question actually. Oh yeah, someone wanted to know what is the difference between a sit and go and a tournament? Kind of put simply, a sit and go is a situation where there's a set amount of players, there's a set prize pool, and you enter for a set fee. Multi-table tournaments are slightly different because the fee can sometimes vary depending on like if you're having a reload or a second shot sometimes with it. But you can normally re-enter in a multi-table tournament. So if you get knocked out within the first hour, you can normally re-enter. You can't do that in sit goes normally. And there is an unlimited amount of players normally in a multi-table tournament. Does your style, Ben Harling? I'm not sure. So that's kind of like the basic differences, really. The other thing I kind of wanted to cover as well is like, where's best to play if you're a beginner? Where's best to play? When I started playing, I was quite lucky because I found a private members club in Hackney called Gutshot, where people were very happy to kind of discuss strategy and all those kind of things, and that's kind of a bit rare now. So if you want to play live, it's quite daunting going to a casino. And when I say live, I mean like in the flesh, round a table in a casino. There's loads of places in London to play. Obviously, we are Burlington Games is based in London, so Vice is going to kind of be London-centric. But so there's Asper's Casino in Stratford, there's the Hippodrome, there's the Empire, there's the Grove at Victoria, there's the Cromwell Mint. So there's all these places that have poker rooms. And once you've sat down for the first time, the fear goes. You don't feel so worried about playing. And if you explain to anyone in a card room, look, I'm a beginner, they'll always help you along and give you some advice because ultimately they want you there, right? And then in terms of playing online, I would recommend that as a good starting point. So you play for very low stakes, and I would say always play for low stakes, don't play for free. Anything that you play for free, inevitably is played like crazy and it'll put you off because people don't play poker when they've got no money to lose. They're just playing a machine. There's got to be money involved. So even if you can afford 20 quid, do it and give it a go for the first time. And on the internet, it's a really good start. So there's loads of websites out there. I'm not going to name any, but you'll find them yourself. But give it a go for actual money and you can start to really understand how the game works. Okay. Would you say your style of play changes drastically depending on the type of game you're playing, i.e. a tourney rather than a one-table game? Definitely, yeah. Your style of play should adapt to the players you're facing. So you shouldn't. There are times to slow down, and there are times to speed up. So what I mean by that is there are definitely times to be more aggressive. So say you're playing with 7 people who are all quite weak passive, put it that way. So they don't play their hands with any strength, and they like to call a lot. You should be playing aggressively against these kind of players. If you're on a table full of nutters, you should not be getting involved without the goods because you don't want to go to war with people who are willing to put it straight back at you. Depending on the type of game you're playing. So yeah, in a tourney, it's very hard to win money in a tournament situation anyway. So to give yourself a chance of winning, you're going to have to play selectively aggressive, is how I put it. But as you go along and play more and see the same faces, you'll start to realise that you need to adapt your game at certain times. And this is what is really the essence of being a poker player. You're understanding what the table dynamics are and who's going mad and who you want to be avoiding getting into pots with and who you want to be targeting. I mean, I'd say in a one-table game, there are people you can target. So you can target the weak players and get their money off them, whereas and be that strong player at the table. I've heard of Texas Hold'em, but are there any other types of poker? Asked Ben Clark. Yes, not in casinos. Unfortunately, it's very rare in casinos, but there are loads of different types of poker. The one we all played on the back of a school bus is the one that I really enjoy the most, and I would say it's like actually. They say Texas Hold'em's a Cadillac poker. It's not. This game was called 5-card draw. It's where you get given 5 cards, only you can see them, and you get to draw. You give one away, and then you get another one given to you. You're still trying to make the best 5-card poker hand you can. That is a different type of poker, but it's not commonly played in casinos anymore. But 5-card draw, that's an excellent game, and it's where you have 3 draws to make your hand, and there's no community board. And that game, often seen in the movies. Another really good game that's seen in the movies, if you've seen a film called Cincinnati Kid, which is excellent, I recommend it, it's got Steve McQueen. In that film, they play a game called Stud. So Stud is where you get your 1 card face down and you play your own boards. So the dealer will give 1 card here to you that you can see, 4 cards to the others, 4 cards for the rest of your board, and there'll be another board for the other players. And everyone has their own board rather than everyone having a community board. That game can run quite dry, but it's quite a good format. So there's Stud, that's Stud, 5-card Stud. There's 7-card Stud as well. There's other variants of Stud where it's high and low. You're trying to make the worst hand. That's called Raz or London Low Ball. There's also, you've got 5-card draw. There's 5-card draw, and you can have that which is like 1 draw or 2 draws or 3 draws. That's a really hard game to play. That's an excellent game, and it's all about your brazenness to put money into the middle. Really, that's become really pure poker. You're really trying to challenge your opponent. Other variants of poker that are kind of more popularly played in casinos actually is Omaha. So Omaha is where you play Hold'em effectively, but you get 4 starting cards. So you can make a huge array of different hands. There's still 3 cards in the middle. There's still a turn card. There's still a river card. And you can make, you have to at least play 2. You must play 2 from your hand. That is the golden rule in Omaha. You must play 2 of the cards from your hand. So that's those are the other variants. There are loads of other variants of poker, but and they've all got crazy names that kind of like Super Stud, Omaha High Low, Irish, Southern Cross, Paducah. So there's loads of different variants. Maybe get onto those in another video. But commonly played in casinos, Omaha is probably the second most common game because it's quite simple to play if you've played Hold'em. You get 4 cards given to you, and you must play 2 of them. So, for instance, you cannot make a flush with 1 card, whereas in Texas Hold'em, you can make a flush with 1 card. The other thing to say there, actually, Ben, about other variants of poker, there are variants of poker. So you've got stud, draw. So you've got draw games, which is like, as I explained, 5-card draw. You've got draw games. You've got stud games, which is where you get your own boards, and you've got flop games. So like Omaha, Irish, Texas Hold'em. So there's 3 different types of games, really, because they have different procedures for each of them. There's also 3 different types of betting limits. It's quite important to know. Everyone plays Texas Hold'em, and they play at no limit. You can play this game fixed limit or pot limit. I'll show you what I mean by that. So these red chips here are £5 chips. The blinds are 5 and 10. In no limit, I can put my £40, 50 quid straight in the middle, and that's my bet. In pot limit, I can only bet what's in the pot. So I put my 10 in, and then there's another 10, 20, another 25. So another 25 on top. So I can bet in pot limit only 35. So remember, in no limit, I can put the other 15 in, the whole 50, but in pot limit, I can only bet 35. In fixed limit, which is the other variant, the betting set. So it's 5, 10, if I want to raise, I make it it'll be 15, I think, or it'll be 20. I make it 20. The next bet would be 30 because the increments go up by 10. So there are there are 3 different betting variants: fixed limit, pot limit, and no limit. All the different variants of poker can be played either no limit, fixed limit, or pot limit. So you can play those stud games here: 5 card stud, 7 card stud, stud high, stud low, stud high low, super stud. All those stud games, they can be played. Traditionally, they are played pot limit or fixed limit, but you can play them no limit as well if you're crazy. The draw games, 5 card draw, Baduki, Paduki. These games can also be played fixed limit, no limit, or pot limit. And then your flop games traditionally are always played no limit. So you play Texas Hold'em no limit, but you can play Texas Hold'em fixed limit or pot limit. You've also got Irish. You can play that fixed limit, pot limit, or no limit. You can play Omaha, always play pot limit, but you can play it fixed limit and you can play it no limit. Pretty crazy to play it no limit because there's a lot of money always ends up in the middle. And then all the other flop games that are available, you can play those fixed limit, no limit, or pot limit. So those are the kind of different betting structures that are available. And that is for both cash games and for tournaments. So cash games can be fixed limit, pot limit, or no limit. And tournaments can be fixed limit, pot limit, or no limit. Sometimes they can be mixed limit, but we won't get into that. So that's probably quite important if you do ever go to a casino to play. Have a look at the game you're playing, or if you go and log on to the internet. If it says NLHE, that's no limit hold'em. If it says PLHE, you're playing pot limit hold'em. So you've registered for a pot limit tournament. If it says FL, it means it's fixed limit. So I've done this before. You registered for a tournament, it says $20 or £20, and you get into the tournament and you're like, well, I want to go all in, but I can't. The reason for this is that you probably registered for a pot limit or a fixed limit tournament. So those are the different variants and different betting structures. I think we might leave it there, guys. Thanks so much for joining. If you like this, join us again next week, 7 o'clock, same place in my kitchen on YouTube. We'll send a link around again on Instagram. Give us a follow if you can at Burlington Games on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook group. All our posts are put up there. And also on LinkedIn if you're there. We like to disturb LinkedIn a bit with some fun stuff rather than all the dry stuff you might get on there. Our YouTube channel, you can subscribe to it. Also, final thing, don't forget, the reason we're ending now is I've got to get ready because I need to go and bash some pans outside at 8 o'clock. Don't forget to support the NHS and give them a big round of applause in 20 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again. Don't forget, next week, same live Q&A, starting at 7 o'clock, running for half an hour, 45 minutes. I hope to see you all there again. Thanks to everyone who put their questions in, and send us your questions for the next time. All right, cheers, guys. Bye.